Hi Radhika, it's Jack Parry from Melbourne in Australia. How are you? Just going to go through your work this week. I'm your peer buddy. I didn't really have time to give you a proper introduction last week, but here we go. I'm going to look at your first shot first, and the one thing I want you to look at with your work is the idea of a holistic approach to animation. One thing that I think is a really important experience as your growth as an animator is to understand that every single pose, as you go from a pose, even if it's an in-between, does involve some kind of change in every single part of your body. So one of the things that I like to ask people to consider when they are working on their animations is to give yourself a checklist. And for every part that's visible in your character, so we'll say from the chest upwards, all the way your clavicles, your elbows, your forearm, your hands, your wrists and everything, to do a checklist and make sure that you are animating every single part of your character for every single frame. Because the one thing that I think you could really help yourself with is to be asking yourself from one frame to another, yes, for example here in your first pose with this character on stage right, as you move from one frame to another, what moves and what isn't moving, and what parts feel like they haven't had anything happening to them. So here you can see that the big part of your move is the way that he moves in his spine, and he adjusts with his head and he makes some facial expression changes. But the things that aren't changing that are notable to me are his shoulders, and I feel that there's no real change in his spine. Now, I'm not saying that there is, but there might be a slight change. There might be an ever so slight twist in his spine, and that's going to be noticeable. As he's moving back, you may feel that there's an ever so slight change in his shoulders as well, and he might do something with his fingers. He might, as he's moving forward, he might just move his fingers ever so slightly. So not big movements, but the little ones, and it's those little ones which make things feel as though that they're actually progressing. So here as well, you are getting the major movements, but I still feel that things are not changing that much, especially if you look at your video reference in particular, you'll notice that that your posture is a lot more in this sort of angle. You've got a much more leaned over spine, and your shoulders are naturally a lot more further down, and you've got this angle over the top of your shoulders here. And when you are doing this and holding the shape, there's this, if you would imagine a three-dimensional shape here, you've got this topology through your body, and it really feels there. And then with your head, it's also very much in a rounder, more curvaceous sense than here where the body is just straight up and down. So that's just something, again, subtle, but that's the sorts of things that you should look at from one frame to another. So from here to here, the shape, how he actually gets down to the table is most likely going to be achieved not I'm not sure how you achieve that, but you go from a straighter pose to a rounder pose as to how he got down there, and you would feel that his shoulders have gone from being up here to being down here as he's leaning down across. There's a feeling of foreshortening as he's approaching the camera. Because for me, throughout the whole thing, and here as well especially, you've got this shape here, and that shape doesn't really change that much. Doesn't matter what he does. And when you do something like this, when you're reaching across here to doing this, you will necessarily change your spine in some way, even if it's small, because you've got the balance here. You're not going to be able to do this, and even if I do this, I'm having some kind of change, shift. I can feel muscles down the right hand side of my body moving to compensate for that change in my shape. So just as a necessary checklist, always ask yourself, have I done something to my hips? Have I done something to the sections of my spine? Have I done something to my clavicles? Have I done something to my elbows? And have a holistic approach to your posing. And if you think that nothing's moved, move it just a little bit, just a little bit, just so there's some change. Because here, especially in these sorts of poses, that one there, and I know you probably haven't really thought about that much, but even in the blocking stage, if you think, well, if he's going to be reaching across to here, you may have the spine a little bit more over that way, and when we get back to this one, then it adjusts to more of an upright shape. So you can have the arms across a bit to allow for that to happen and have the change in shape there, and when he moves back, then that just adjusts, and this hand might raise a little bit higher than normal, and as it goes back, then it can lower a little bit, and still essentially the same shape, but you get that feeling as though that there's something, not just the hand involved in that movement, but a holistic movement. And you don't have to necessarily move the head that much. The head can stay where it is, and you can compensate by having the body move a little bit, and it just makes that movement feel as though it's all part of the same body. And that applies, something you can apply through all your work. And once you start doing that, you'll see your work just goes way through the roof. It's a simple thing to do, because I know it's difficult to think about all the different body parts as you're animating, but if you do take the time to make sure that you don't have static parts, then the static parts are not going to be with you when you go into the later stage of animation. And when you get into your splining or your polishing, then there's no need for a mentor at any stage to turn around and say, oh, you're hitting a wall here, or that's just the spacing's wrong. The spacing can't be wrong if you're constantly thinking about the way things move. If you get a spacing issue on the chest, it's because you're not really thinking about the chest as the arm moves. If the arm reaches across, the chest should naturally move with the arm to allow that to happen, because unless you've got yourself chained to a wall, it's very unlikely that your hand's going to come across like that. All right, that's probably enough for me today. Nice to meet you. Good luck with that. If you want me to give you more feedback in general, when you do your work, if you could render it and put it on Dropbox and send me a Dropbox link, then I can go through your work in Photoshop and do proper drawovers. Okay, because here I'm just using the animation mentor interface, and I've only really got a black pen, and it's pretty awful. If you send me a Dropbox link, then I can go over in full color, and we can do all sorts of things like proper drawovers. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.